In this video lecture, we're going to talk about the basics of scheduling jobs in Unix. We'll look at two facilities for scheduling jobs. One is a facility called Cron, and it is useful for scheduling recurring jobs on regular intervals. And the other is called at, or the AT command, that's really great for scheduling one-off jobs. So let's talk about these two different facilities, talk a little bit about how they work, and then we can take a look at how they work on the command line. So for both of these facilities to work with scheduling jobs, you're going to either use cron or at. So cron is, again, built for regularly scheduled occurring jobs. So if you want a job to execute like every Friday at 5 o'clock, or every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 2 a.m., or every day at a certain time, cron's the facility you're going to use. There's a couple of different types of cron on the system, and they're all actually cron, but they're all related to different users. So each user can have their own file for scheduled jobs. The root user can have their own file for scheduled jobs. And then there's also in the etc directory a place where you can set up system-related cron jobs as well. So it's always going to be important too when we talk about scheduling this that you need to think about what privileges the user needs to execute the commands that you're scheduling and where those should be, and if they're related to a specific user or if they're related to the system as a whole. In this video lecture, I'm only going to really discuss cron in terms of the general use of the utility and formatting and scheduling jobs. The specifics of who is the appropriate person to execute a cron job is not going to be covered. The other way you can schedule a job is the at command. It's a great way to say like, I have to run to lunch, but I need something to happen while I'm at lunch. You can use the at command to say like just at noon or at 12:30 perform this specific command. It is specifically for one-off jobs. A great example would be, we know that there's going to be a power issue tonight, so maybe what I want to do is just shut the machine down at a certain time and then allow the whoever is going to be in the data center to bring things back up online do that themselves. So it can be a really useful command for just things that need to happen at one time. So we'll talk about the format of the cron file first, and then what we'll do is we'll jump over to the command line and we'll look at both how cron works and how the AT command also functions. One of the things that's interesting about the Crontab format that I'm about to show you is that it's actually contained on page 5 of the Crontab man page. Up to this point, you may have only ever looked at the default man page by just typing in man space the name of a command. But just a reminder that you can put in a specific section or page number for a man page and get a different set of information. Not all man files contain different pages, but if you do man space man, you can find out about what should be stored on what page. So specifically, to get information on the Crontab format, you are going to need to do man 5 Crontab, because this information is going to be on page 5 of the Crontab man page. So when you go ahead and you start editing your cron file in Unix, whether you are a regular user or you are a system user such as root, or you are building stuff that works with the kind of system-focused cron system, you're going to have a file that's going to basically have one line for every job that you need run, and that line is going to give the system information about what should be run, and specifically, you can add other things in there like a path information, user information as to what to run the job as. But specifically, I want to look at in this lecture the format of just the line and what information it provides. So you'll notice in this slide, I have got each of these components labeled. And so the first several items, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items to the left in a cron file, these are related to the time that the job will run. So in this case, the first column represents minutes, and this represents clock time. So the second column is going to represent the hour. The next is going to represent the day of the month. The next column is going to represent the month, and the next column is going to represent the day of the month. It's important when executing your cron jobs and when setting these up that you actually choose days and times that are valid. And then finally, the thing to the rightmost area is going to be the actual command that you want to run. And this specific screenshot is of the system cron, and again, that's going to be beyond the scope of this video lecture, but it's important to note that what is in the green box is indicative of what should be run, and then everything in the multicolored boxes on the left are the times at which those components would run. And so if you look at this first example I've got, you'll notice that this runs at minute 1. So this would run at 12:01, 1:01, 2:01, 3:01, 4:01, 5:01, and so on. It runs every hour. Asterisk in this case is a wild card. It runs every day of the month. It runs every month, and it runs every day of the week. On the next line down, you'll notice that this runs at 2 past the hour. It's always good to kind of have a little bit of space between all your cron jobs so not everything's running at the same exact minute. And so what this will run at is at hour 4, so at 4 a.m., at 2 past the hour. So at 4:02, this job will run. And when will it run? Every day of the month, of every month, any day of the week. If we start looking at what we've got here, on the next line we've got 4:22. So again, this will run at 4 a.m. It'll run at 22 minutes past the hour. So this is the idea that this will run at 4:22 every morning. It will run every day of the month. It will run every month. And it will run on which day of the week? Well, it will run on day 0, which I'm pretty sure is Sunday. I will say that, and then if I'm wrong, I will make an adjustment. And finally up on the next line is you have got another one. And you, by the way, you can see these names over here on the right-hand side, these folders. These are actually not specific. These are actually folders that contain some default scripts and it makes it easy for you to run scripts hourly, daily, weekly, and monthly. Again, this is not the type of cron that I'm going to show in the video lecture. And so again, just to go back to reading the time component here, we're really only looking at this block of items on the left. This script will run at 4 a.m., 24 minutes past the hour. It will run on the first day of the month, and it will run for every month, and it doesn't really care what day of the week it will be. So these are just some basic ways to read this file. So let's jump over to the command line and edit a user cron tab and set up a couple of different scenarios and talk about how you might want to set jobs up to do certain things. So right now I'm logged in as a regular user, and I can go ahead and I can edit my cron tab by typing in crontab-e. And when I execute this command, what it's going to do is it's going to dump me into my default text editor. And in this case, it's Vim. And what you'll get is some information about how this file is used, how this file can be set up. And what you'll notice is there's already a line in this file as an example. And so what I'll do is I'm just going to go uncomment that and jump in here and start to add some spaces in here. So any line in a text file that starts with a hash mark is going to be a comment. It's something that's not going to be executed. But in this case, what I have now is I have a regular cron entry. And specifically, if you read the notes above, it says that on an Ubuntu system, they put this sample in. And it says that it's going to create a backup of your home directory into a tar file. It's going to gzip it, and it's going to drop it into /var/backups. So that way, it looks like you get like a user account backup all the time, which can be really nice. Actually, this is for all user accounts, not just for a single user. So this would be a quick and dirty way to get a backup of all user accounts on a system. I'm not sure that it's the best way to do it, but it's one option. So let's look at when this is actually executed. This will be executed at the top of the hour. 0 minutes means this will be executed like, midnight, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, right on the hour. In this case, it says it'll be executed at the 5th hour. So this means 5 a.m., right? This is on any day of the month, every month, and on the first day of the week. And specifically in this case, the first day of the week is going to be Monday. And that's very helpful. And so if we want to set this up, and then specifically what's going to run. So this is going to run the tar command. It's going to gzip and create a new archive. It's going to create that archive in the /var/backups directory. That archive will be called home.tgz. And it's also it's basically going to zip up everything in the home directory, so all user accounts. So if we want to add our own line to this, I'm already in insert mode. So what we could do is add something to run at 1/4 after the hour. Let's say we want it to run at 11 a.m. Again, we want this to run every day. So ********. This would be the format for this specific command, whatever we decide to run at 11:15 every day. And so in this case, I don't know what I want to run. I'll just run something that you would never run daily. How about, we'll just call it some command, because I don't really have a good one off the top of my head. And what you do is you just add a new line for every single item that you would like executed. In this case, if I hit escape and save out, you'll notice that it installs my new Crontab and basically registers that with the cron daemon on the system, so that those commands will get executed at the times that were listed in the file. If we take a look at the man page for Crontab, you'll notice a couple of different bits of information about it. It's worth reading. The one thing I like is that you can actually use a -L option with Crontab to go ahead and see what's actually in there. So if we do Crontab -L, you can see all the jobs that are scheduled. Notice it just dumps that text file for your Crontab. This is the best way to edit your personal Crontab, is just using the Crontab command. And again, remember, there are other different. It's important to note that if you do not have the privileges to run these commands, or you do not have the privileges to execute or write to these folders, then these commands will actually not run. So it can be pretty helpful. One other thing I'd mentioned in the presentation was where you find information about the Crontab format. And again, if you check the page or section 5 of the Crontab man page, you will see more detailed information on how to go about formatting this file. Scrolling down through the file, you'll notice that I was correct that 0 is Sunday. And you can also use the names of the week, and you have the opportunity to actually go ahead and format these files any way you want. It's a definite must-read to look through this file. It's very, very valuable. It gives you some shortcuts too. For example, using */2 to mean every 2 hours or every other week type of thing. I think you could use it for every other week. And yeah, it's really valuable. So take a look at that. One additional thing to note about cron is it depends on who you are. So in this case, if I become the root user, and I go to edit my Crontab file, you'll notice that the things that I had entered in my Crontab file as the user JSON are no longer here. So these are user-specific cron files. And in this case, since I'm root user, the cron jobs that I execute would be run with the privileges of the root user. So it's okay to set up cron jobs as root. Although it's important to mention, I'm not going to set any cron jobs up as root, is that on your system, most Unix distributions in your etc directory have a folder. And if you notice, if I keep hitting tab, they have a series of folders in the etc directory that start with the word cron. And so there's cron.d, cron.daily, cron.hourly, cron.monthly, cron.weekly. In each of these folders, what you essentially will find are scripts. And there is a system-wide cron file that can be edited that basically says on the system to to go in and run all the scripts in the cron.hourly directory. And every month, go in and run the scripts in the cron.monthly directory. And every day, go in and run the scripts in the cron.daily directory. So the system itself provides some pretty nice ways to easily execute scripts at a given time without having to set all these up as a root user's cron job. These are obviously all stored in the etc directory, so these files require elevated privileges to save things into these directories, and they would run with the given privileges that are in the scripts. So let's take a look at the system-wide cron file and also what's in these directories. Right now I'm in the /etc directory, and the first thing we'll take a look at is a file called Crontab. This is the system-wide Crontab file. So normally if you're a regular user and you're editing your own Crontab file, you would use crontab-e, and it would create a new file, and it would run with your privileges, and it would be just associated with you. Again, even if you're the root user, you could edit your own Crontab file, and those specific commands would be edited with you. But if you have cron jobs or reoccurring jobs that are going to be system-wide, it's really nice because in this case, Ubuntu and pretty much every distribution has this script setup available to you to go into and essentially have automatically run scripts at given times based upon you don't even need to edit this Crontab folder. or file. You could actually add some of your own cron items to this file if you would like. That would run using the sh shell, that would have access to this path, and would run with elevated privileges. So what's really nice is that you could actually just drop some scripts into these directories and have them run by default. You could also change, like if you don't want scripts to run hourly at 17 minutes past the hour, you could change this to 1 or 30 or whatever is more appropriate. So as a root user, you could edit these files. So again, you can put cron jobs into this file. These are system related and not specifically affiliated with any user. If I go into the remember, there were a number of cron directories. Let's go look at what happens in the cron.daily directory. You'll notice in here there are a number of script files, and these are all executable. And if you look at that Crontab file we just looked at, there's just a facility that basically says run every script in this directory every day. And so if we look at something like, I don't know, log rotate, which is probably a good script to look at, which basically goes ahead and makes sure if our log files are getting too big, they get time-stamped and circulated out every day so that we don't have one massive log file. And you notice that this is just a shell script, and this essentially goes and handles renaming the log file, creating a new one, and backing up the old file. And this runs every day. So again, just a series of shell scripts. If I go up and look at one of the other cron directories, like hourly, notice there's nothing in it. So if I wanted an hourly cron job, I could write a shell script, and all I have to simply do is drop it into that directory, and it'll get executed. And then again, if I go up and look at cron.weekly, there's a couple of things in there. And so if we take a peek at that, like say man-db, you can take a peek at what happens for this file. I really don't know what this is doing either, but again, the important part is regenerate the man database. What's really important is that this is a nice, easy way for system-related management scripts to be set up and executed. It's important to mention in this lecture that I'm specifically talking about the cron command. There's also a facility on Unix called anacron, and I would recommend that you take a look at the anacron man page so that you could learn a little bit more about the difference between cron and anacron and why you might want to use one over the other. You can also do a Google search on anacron. So just a recommendation so you can realize that there are a couple different ways to schedule jobs that are similar, but there are some important differences between the two, and I'll leave that as an exercise for you to look into if you're interested. If you want to schedule a job that's only going to occur one time, then it's better to use the at command. The at command allows you to schedule a single job to run at a given time one time. A couple of different commands are related to the at command. If I type at queue, it would show me all of the jobs I have scheduled to execute one time. So it basically shows me my at queue. If I want to go ahead and add a job to that queue, the command is at and the time that I would like that job to run. You can use a number of ways to format the time that you would like the job to run, but there's also a couple of quick shortcuts, like at noon. And you'll notice that if you look at my system clock, I've actually missed noon by 37 minutes at this point, but that's okay. So I'm going to go ahead and type at noon, and then I just hit enter. And what it's going to do at that point is dump me into the at shell. And here's where I'll be able to list the commands that I want executed. And in this specific case, I'm going to try to keep things rather simple. And so I'm going to execute some commands that you normally wouldn't want executed with the at command. So in this case, I'm just going to take I don't know. I should have probably come up with a better command, but let's say I want to execute something like get a list of system resources that are currently running and dump them to, and then write them out to a file. So, okay, I hit enter, and what that'll do is run the psef command. It should get the standard output and redirect that into a file when the command runs. And at this point, if I want to get out of this, the command I utilize to get out of my at queue is Control-D. And it will tell you that that job has been scheduled. It has an ID of 9, and it'll tell me that it's going to run tomorrow at noon. And so if you take a peek at all of these commands together, this is what composes building an at command. And if I look at atq now, it gives me the ability to see that I have one job scheduled. And if I want to get rid of that, there's also at rm, and I can actually give the job number and remove that job. And then if I look at atq, you can see that that's gone. You can enter a number of jobs using the at command, and they'll just be queued up to run at the appropriate interval. It's important that when you execute commands that, again, that you have the appropriate privileges to do what you're trying to do, and that you have the appropriate, in my case, if I'm writing out a file that, I didn't give it absolute path, it's important that the command actually, has more information to actually get done what it needs to get done, and so that it can be, so that you don't have any errors. A couple other things that are important. You should definitely take a look at the man page for the AT command. It'll give you some more commands and some more information, specifically how to read a series of commands from a file into the at command. As you scroll down through, it'll also give you more information on specifically how you can have the job or how you can format the time for specific jobs. Just one more item to demonstrate. You can actually say things like if you want a job to execute in 1 minute from now, you could say now +1 or now +5 minutes, and that will set up a job to execute in 5 minutes. And I'm going to Control C out of that. And one more time, I can also give the I believe it's the -v command. Yep, which will not only would say that this job is going to execute in 5 minutes, but -v will allow the at command to show me what specific time that is. And then I could go ahead and enter my command, hit enter,